so many think demand generation is this elusive, magical thing, and that once they figure out the secret that everyone is holding from them, they'll never have to worry about revenue again. And they just got to figure out this one secret. And it's this really complex process and this big thing they need to unlock. We're here to tell you that there is no secret to demand generation. And I think that's very good news, Kevin. The most simple demand generation engines are often the most effective.
Welcome to the B2B Playbook. We built this channel for small B2B marketing teams who want to drive more revenue for their business. Every week, we're showing you how to create more demand for your brand step by step using our 5Bs framework. So if you're time poor, resource strapped, but you still want to make a big impact on your business, make sure you hit that like and subscribe button down below so you don't miss an episode. Welcome back to the B2B Playbook. Today we're discussing the mindset that you need to execute demand generation so it helps you drive revenue for your business. We are deep into season 6 of the show. We spent seasons 1 to 5 giving away our 5Bs framework for demand generation, releasing it step by step. Please go back and listen to these if you haven't already. Kevin, could you please tell any new listeners what our 5Bs framework is all about?
Yeah, of course, George. So listeners, the 5Bs framework composes of be ready, be helpful, be seen, be better, and be the best. And be ready, we talked about how to deeply understand your dream customers. And be helpful, we then talked about how to develop relationships with them. And then off the back of that, trust with them online, specifically with helpful content. And be seen, we then looked at how do you amplify that content and how do you focus in on your dream customers once again so that your helpful content is getting to those dream customers. And then in Be Better, we looked at how to optimize that whole process you've then built up until that point in your B2B marketing. And finally, in Be the Best, we looked at how to use some of those advanced strategies and tactics used by the guys at the bigger end of town in your own marketing.
Very good. And look, that is our framework, our 5Bs framework for demand generation. That's where we show you step by step how to do it. And today we're actually discussing the mindset that you need to execute demand generation. And the context around this conversation, Kevin and listeners, is look, when we speak to companies and marketers in those companies, and we speak to a lot, the impression that we get is that so many think demand generation is this elusive, magical thing. And that once they figure out the secret that everyone is holding from them, they'll never have to worry about revenue again. And they just got to figure out this one secret. And it's this really complex process and this big thing they need to unlock. We're here to tell you that there is no secret to demand generation. And I think that's very good news, Kevin. The most simple demand generation engines are often the most effective. And I think, Kevin, when it comes down to it, there's really 3 key things you need to remember when it comes to your mindset for demand generation. The first is it's all about your target audience and making sure that you're helping them get what they want, because then you're building relationships and staying top of mind. So when they're ready to buy, they come to you first over the competition. The second is you need that consistency of message, and you need to make sure that the delivery of that message happens, meaning that message is actively getting in front of their eyeballs. Thirdly, you need systems and frameworks to remain consistent. Consistency is everything in this game. You need to stay top of mind. You need to be present when that person is ready to buy. And so if you don't have a system for doing that and you aren't able to stay top of mind, then there's a good chance that you're going to fall out of that conversation when they start making that short list of vendors. We're going to go further into those 3 key things. And Kev, that first one, it's all about being helpful, right? It's about your target audience and helping them get what they want.
Yeah, 100%, George. And it's something that we obviously spoke at length about in that stage in the podcast in season 2, all the way back there, but also along the way as we try to put in reminders in for this particular point of being helpful. Because as you said, and the premise of this episode in particular is, listeners, you have to have that mindset going into these conversations when you're talking about demand generation, when you're building that demand generation practice in your business. It doesn't have to be overly complicated. It's as simple as that. Keeping in mind and committing to actually being helpful to your target audience. So you really need to figure out, if you're going to commit to something like this, you need to figure out where you're going to focus your energy, because you can't be helpful to everybody out there. Oftentimes when we talk to companies, when we talk to businesses, we realize along the way in talking to them that most people actually have too big a definition for their total addressable market, whether that's because they're trying to justify the potential of their business to VCs, whether that's because they're trying to push on their particular practice and their particular market share and their particular area as a focus in the business, whatever that might be. If you're looking to do demand generation properly, you have to focus down and niche down first. You have to figure out how you can get the system to prove out that MVP case, so then you can start actually being helpful to that particular niche, and then take the learnings from that and build it out to the next niche and the next niche, and then expand your audience that way. So your target audience is very important as a starting point. In setting that be helpful mindset, you have to clarify exactly who you're marketing to. You need to segment down and niche down, because quite simply, your business, your particular team just can't afford to market to everyone. You don't have the resources, whether that's monetary, whether that's timeline in terms of runway, or even human capital resource to actually produce the amount of expert information that you need to really nail down that particular target audience.
And the more we narrow that down and define it, Kevin, the better we can help them. I would say that, look, largely our framework could probably help anyone in marketing. It really could. It's based on the foundational principles of marketing. But no one would know who we are. No one would listen to us if we just went out there and said, hey, we have this great framework for marketing. We're competing against the likes of Seth Godin and Joe Paluzzi and Ogilvy, like all these huge names. Like, how could we start to grab a foothold for ourselves in that kind of market when there are such clear established leaders? And so we had to find our own niche. And we realized that our framework, because of our experience, was really, really well suited to B2B marketing. And initially, it was those B2B marketings who were in small teams, because we were part of those small teams. And so we learned how to do B2B marketing in a really resource efficient way. And then we learned that a lot of what we were doing was really actually a reflection of demand generation, which was a very popular term. And so we repositioned what we were doing to frame it as demand generation, and to try and help redefine what that is. So it's only because we did that, and because we kept narrowing and niching and say, hey, we are for this particular segment, that we were able to stand out, that we were able to deeply understand what a small set of people needed from us and what we had to say to them in order for them to trust us, so we could help them. So they knew that when they needed something, we would be top of mind for them. And that's why I have, Kevin, up on my whiteboard, which, again, listeners, we release all of our podcasts along with video. They're available on YouTube, and we always have our whiteboard to complement it. On the whiteboard, I show really a person on the left and a person on the right, and they're separated by a river and a bridge. The person on the left is your target prospect. We need to get them across that bridge to become the person on the right, which is a happy, smiling customer. To get across it, you have to build a bridge of trust. That bridge of trust is really done by showing someone that you understand them, that you can help them, that you are a terrific fit and match for their needs, and that you will not let them down. Because remember, they could just choose the incumbent. They could just stick with the status quo. And if this goes wrong, if they choose you and it goes wrong, there's the risk that that is a bad outcome for them professionally. So that's why in B2B, it's so important to define your target audience so you know how to help them get what they want. And Kevin, that extends to marketing and sales, doesn't it?
Yeah, certainly. It should stretch across your whole business, your whole practice. That be helpful mindset, that mantra should be across your whole business. Because as George just said there, no target prospect is going to become a customer unless they have that level of trust within your brand, within the people in your business. And importantly, they also need to prioritize the problem that you're trying to solve for them as well. But just on that, I think if you're trying to be helpful, if you're trying to help them win in their own businesses, in their own practices, if you have that mindset, then all this becomes quite easy. The decision is what is going to help your specific niche of dream customers perform at their best, get the most out of their business, and how can you assist with them based on the expertise that your business has and you yourself and your team have. So it makes it very easy for you to think, okay, if I'm going to be helpful and build trust with this group of people, I know these are the issues that they potentially would be dealing with. When our best customers, when we talk to them, they're telling us these are the kind of issues that we're having that we were able to solve for them. Let's put out helpful content around that topic, around those sort of pain points that we're already across, that we're helping solve, and put that information out there that will naturally build that trust. Because very likely your target prospect will have the same problems, will be looking for the same solutions that your dream customers already have. So it's just a matter of helping them where you're already doing that for your best customers.
And it's exactly what we do with the B2B playbook. It's what we're doing right here is we are giving away a lot of the answers to our framework. Sure, you got to go through and listen from episode 1 to 100 or so because it is very detailed in the way that we share it. But most conversations I have, Kevin, with people who want to work with us, it starts with, I love your content. It's been so helpful. And because we've helped them already in their day-to-day job, that has then helped build a good amount of trust between us that then allows them to take that leap of faith and start working with us over perhaps the incumbent because we have helped them, because we have developed that relationship with them. And for us, that has started with our mindset of be helpful.
And I think, George and listeners, there's probably an element of fear as well in committing to something like being helpful and being that transparent with the expertise that you have out there. But it's important to keep in mind that without that, it's very difficult to build that brand reputation. You have to wait for that word of mouth to carry out people who have had great experiences with your expertise, with your particular product or service. And it takes a very long time for you to replicate that same sort of buy-in, same sort of trust that you could do very quickly by being a little bit more transparent with the helpful content you can put out there. And you don't have to fear that someone's going to jump in and copy everything you do and take that away from you. Certainly, you're going to be able to offer a lot more value than what you are sharing. That just comes part and parcel with the nature of your expertise that you would offer in a B2B scenario, because once you develop that relationship, you then hone in your expertise to a very significant degree to each particular use case, to each particular customer that comes on board that you could potentially help. Even with SaaS platforms and the prevalence of those, there's still a lot of honing that you do once they jump in, once they start to see what points of value they can get from your particular product or platform. You're going to adapt different parts of your platform to deliver more value for those different customers. So actually, even though that you're sharing a lot of these insights up front, there's still a big degree of value that you're adding to the process down the track as they become your actual customer, as you develop that working relationship. And quite frankly, if they were able to do this themselves, they probably would have done it already, and they probably would have figured out a way to do it. If they haven't already, if they're still experiencing those same pain points, then it's likely that they will come to you at some point or another. And who better to come to than the ones that they already trust, because you're already putting that helpful content out there and they know that you're experts in the space.
That's exactly right, Kevin. The person who goes, fantastic, there's this helpful free material, I'm going to go put it together myself. Great. They would have done that anyway. But then they're probably going to go and tell someone else about it who isn't in that position to do it all themselves because it doesn't make sense for them to do it or they don't know how to do it. And then they're going to recommend you. And that's the way this stuff works. It's about building your reputation in the market, showing your expertise, being as helpful as possible, building that trust. And that just sets this whole demand generation engine into motion. The second thing, Kevin, that people need when it comes to their mindset for demand generation, it's you got to have consistency of message, and you've got to make sure that message is constantly getting in front of the eyeballs of your dream customers, of those target prospects. And when I say message, it's not buy now. It's not your brand name the whole time. It's about making sure that you deeply understand what that dream customer wants, how you can help them get it, and getting the key benefits from getting that in front of them. And so, look, the framework that we love to use, Kevin, is the 5 stages of awareness, and we've got that up on our whiteboard. We really firmly believe in creating messaging and content to cover that full stages of awareness, things that take someone from being unaware that they even have a problem that you can help with, to being led to the logical conclusion that you're the perfect match for them, having content across those 5 stages and getting it in front of people consistently. And that's what demand generation is all about. It's about understanding that buying journey, understanding the questions that they have along the way, and making sure that they're answered. So they prioritize the problem that they're having in the way that you solve it, and realize that you are the best person to solve it for them.
George, I think a lot of research is out there talking about how many times you actually have to put your brand and message in front of someone before they actually internalize it, memorize it, or even recognize it at all. And it's somewhere between 6 to 8 exposures before they start recognizing a brand and a message and things like that. So if you think about that, you actually need to get your piece of helpful content in front of the same person 6 to 8 times before it starts to resonate and before they actually can recall your brand or your message. And then in the B2B space, we're talking about getting that message in front of multiple people in a buying committee, multiple people who ultimately have a say in that decision of whether they become a customer of yours or not, which means you have to multiply that again by the number of people in that buying committee. So you actually need to hit that same message plenty of times with a wide array of different type of people, and it has to resonate with all those different people. So you probably need several different variations of the message that really hit home to needs and problem pain points for each of those different people in the buying committee. Obviously, that's a whole different story, but it's just to quickly illustrate how many times you actually have to hit those people with a similar or the same message again and again so that it actually sticks. And that's why it's so important to have that consistency, to have that delivery of that message so many times in repetition before it actually starts to have that desired effect you want from your demand generation. It's always a little longer than you think it will be. It's a lot easier for you to see that many repetitions from your end when you're setting all these things up because you feel like you're seeing it constantly. It's in front of mind every day as you're looking at it. But for somebody else at the other end of that message, it's probably a lot less. So you need to think about it from their perspective and think about how many times you really need to hit it and stick to that process before it starts to resonate.
Kevin, I just want to make a distinction there. You said it takes a bunch of impressions for someone to remember your brand, but there's a real key difference between awareness and affinity. Awareness of a brand is just realizing it exists, but affinity means you have a positive association with it. So recognizing the brand and realizing how they can help you. And that's what we're going for. Who cares if they know the B2B playbook? Like, that doesn't matter. We want to know that we're the B2B playbook and that we are experts in demand generation and we're fantastic at training people up when it comes to demand generation. That's what we want people to remember us for. And they're going to have that positive association by putting forth all that really helpful information around demand generation. So, two very different things. You want to go for affinity, you don't just want to go for awareness.
Very good distinction, George. Very good indeed. And listeners, make sure you go for that second one because even if you're hitting enough reps in that first scenario where you're getting that impression, you're getting that brand recall, it doesn't mean it's the right type of resonation that you want. So quality, quantity question comes in. You need to hit both to be able to be effective. Again, it comes back to knowing your audience. That first point that we made, you need to know your audience. You need to be helpful to them. And you need to hit that consistency in the delivery so that you can hit both quality and quantity.
Kevin, the other reason you need consistency is research shows that only a small percentage of your addressable market is actually actively looking to buy right now. So the research shows that roughly 3 to 5% of your market is actively looking for a solution that you can help with. The other 95% of the market are not. They're not in a buying mode. So that means that you need to continuously stay present with that other 95% of the market. So when they're ready to buy, they come to you first. If all you're ever doing is targeting that 5% of the market that's ready to buy right now, it's actually really difficult to grow and scale your business within that 5%. Because guess what? all your competitors are doing the exact same thing. And so what tends to happen is you have a limited pool that is never really growing. And yet every year, more and more competition, more and more sharks are jumping into that pool. And it just becomes a total bloodbath as you're competing for this limited same number of customers. So unless the industry, the market you're in is growing at a pace that is faster than the number of competition, the number of competitors are jumping into it, which is pretty rare, Kevin, these days when the barrier to entry is very low. You can't afford to only remain competing for that 3 to 5% that are ready to buy right now. So, demand generation is about making sure you stay top of mind, building relationships with that other 95% of the market. So, when they're ready to buy, they buy from you. And look, Kev, I took 6 meetings the other day, people who want to join the B2B incubator. If we only had those 6 meetings, of those 6 meetings, the marketers that I spoke to, some had been following us, Kevin, for 2 years. They've been listening to the B2B playbook for 2 years. Some followed us for about 18 months, some 6 months, and some had discovered us just a few days before. But I went through and ran the numbers and calculated that if I had just started demand generation 6 months ago, we might have had 2 meetings. If we started 18 months ago, we would have had 4. Because we started 2 years ago, we had 6. And that's the way this stuff works. The second best time to start is today, Kevin. Obviously, the best was 2 years ago when we did. Actually, for us, would have been better if we started 5 years ago. But the second best time is today. And that's the way this stuff works. It's building pipeline, it's remaining top of mind, it's staying present. So when people are ready to buy, they're coming to you first.
Listeners, that might sound all like a lot of work, and it certainly is. We're not saying it's an easy shortcut hack that you can do overnight to have that overnight success that a lot of people talk about. But that's where point 3 comes in. You need those systems and frameworks in place to remain that consistent for such a long period of time for demand generation to actually have the effects that you desire and start to kick in and deliver all that great value that you hope to get from it. You need those systems and processes and frameworks to make all those actions much easier to execute and to remain a very simple process to maintain for a very long time. So that might include things like quarterly, monthly, weekly, even daily activities to execute, some sort of system to document all those things, systems and processes to help you then execute that with very minimal change over time. So you don't have to put in as much effort, whether that's repurposing systems or having talking points written out ahead of time so that you can then just execute and focus on executing in the day to day or week to week. It should also be almost boring to execute. If your systems and processes are so good, it should be boring to a certain extent to execute because you know exactly what's coming up, exactly what you need to do every single day, every single week to consistently deliver that demand generation content that you need to put out there, that helpful content that's going to resonate. It's not going to be unpredictable because you don't want that to be unpredictable for your audience either. You want to be consistent, as we talked about in point 2. So those processes and systems that you build over time, that you systemize and you automate as much as possible, will also have the added benefit of helping you remain on track and feel like you're not chasing your tail and trying to figure out what to do next or being too busy to do everything and keep up with everything. Certainly, you need to start then in building those processes from a sort of crawl stage, and then you develop into a walking and running approach. So at the beginning, you might be working out one channel that you're putting that helpful content on. You might be working on a month-to-month basis of content that you're putting out there. And then over time, as you get used to putting that fundamental piece of content out there, then you can start to work on your repurposing processes. You can start to speed up that process if you have the resource to do it weekly instead of monthly, or even daily instead of weekly. And then over time, it's important to also build in feedback loop systems so that you're continually improving that process and you're continually sticking to your dream customers and the needs and pain points as they change over time as well. But again, that could be a system in itself that you're building over time. So all these things feed into this third important point of having those systems and frameworks that you develop over time so that it helps you remain consistent with much more ease and you're continually honing in on your dream customers and being helpful to that particular group.
And let's just share a little bit about our own processes, Kevin. We said you should have quarterly, monthly, weekly, daily activities. Our quarterly activities, every quarter we try and get a collaboration together where we partner with another thought leader and a sponsor and put together a super helpful resource. That is normally a great booster for our brand. It gets us in front of a new audience. Using some sponsorship money, we can reach a much larger audience. The most recent one we did was with Steve Armenti. We put together a great sales and marketing workbook. We partnered with Factors, and we have run that workbook to tens of thousands of marketers, and it's been fantastic for all three parties to be recognized as experts, get new followers, and of course end up contributing to our bottom line too. But it's great to build that trust, and that's a great quarterly activity that we always try and organize. Monthly, we always have our podcast that we're doing 4 times a week. We have our articles, we have our newsletter, we have our YouTube videos, and that really probably breaks down more into our weekly activities, which is every week. We do have a new episode, a new podcast episode, a new YouTube episode. Every week we have a new in-depth article. We have a newsletter that used to be twice a month, but is now every week. Daily now we have LinkedIn posting as our main method of distribution on social. We also have YouTube Shorts and TikTok as well, which is getting into that too. And the reason that we're able to do this is because we have our content repurposing system. For us, it all starts with this episode, the B2B Playbook podcast, and everything is a derivative of that. Our LinkedIn posts, the content from it is derived from this episode. The article is a written version of this episode. Of course, properly edited, and it's great to read, but essentially the core ideas are from that. The newsletter is about the key ideas from the episode as well. And so because we have systems and processes around it, we're able to do all of this in about 5 hours a week. And that's really what helps us remain in front of our ICP, in front of our dream customers consistently. And it's that consistency that's needed if you're going to generate demand, if you're going to stay top of mind. You mentioned the crawl, walk, run approach, Kev. We certainly did that. We didn't start like this, right? We started by crawling. We were barely crawling when we started. We just dedicated ourselves to recording 1 episode a week of the B2B Playbook, and we didn't even have a plan for distributing it.
We certainly didn't. We didn't even really figure out that sort of second channel for distribution until we really started going a few weeks, a few months into producing the content and figuring out all the little things you need to get a podcast out there. From the recording space that we were in, we started with blanket forts to upgrade it to the closet where there was a bit more sound insulation. And then eventually to our current setup, which is a lot easier to maintain. So all these different processes and systems we learned along the way. And then, figuring out what was the best channel to distribute it, what are the best practices for distributing that content, and then how to repurpose it to make that process a bit easier. So lots and lots of different steps along the way to figure all those things out.
Only last thing I'll add, Kevin, is in this process, feedback loops are important as well. So when it comes to the mindset of consistency, yes, we need to just relentlessly execute, but also have feedback loops that are open. And if that's a matter of customer success or sales, getting insights from your customers, if they're finding particular pieces of content really useful, if something is very helpful, then double down on that. So don't just blindly, consistently execute, but make sure you have feedback loops open, whether you're sourcing those insights from customers directly or you've got someone like sales and customer success passing some of those back to you. All right, Kevin, I think that's about it. What do you have for us for the key takeaways?
Key takeaways for this episode are, first, that demand generation is not a mystical, magical thing. It's built on foundational principles of marketing, and it's built on building relationships with people, relationships of trust specifically, which is why it works so well. Now, the best time to start your demand generation was 2 years ago or even earlier, but the second best time is today, like a lot of things that you invest in over time. So make sure you start as early as possible for yourself. And finally, check out the B2B incubator to see how we can help you put together your demand generation engine in just 12 weeks.
That's it, Kev. We give you guys the strategy, the templates, and the tools. We force you to finally put that demand gen engine together. We get you to document it. We give you these systems to make it as easy as possible. Otherwise, you're just going to keep wasting your time trying to piece it together yourself, or even worse, you'll never fully get round to it, and you'll forever be stuck on that marketing activity hamster wheel going nowhere fast. Okay, listeners, you can find links to everything we discussed in the show notes. Kevin and I are so grateful that each week more and more marketers tune in every Monday to the B2B Playbook. If we could ask one thing, it would be to please pass the show on to someone who you think would get value from it. Also, make sure you check us out on YouTube. It's a huge help to us, and we'd really appreciate it. Thank you, Kevin. Thank you, listeners. Take care and catch you next week.
Thank you, George. Thank you, listeners. Take care and catch you all next week.